One
All
more
right,
big
so
topic.
final topic of the day. Yeah, we're gonna move on to what the entire world has been waiting for, is our opinion on Pokemon Violet and Scarlet.
It sucks. Good night,
Um,
everybody.
but
No, I was
yeah,
good.
I'll
Team
be honest.
ChazmaN, go.
I think
What?
Phoenix has probably finished the game at this point. I have not even finished it. But yeah, I'm curious. I really want to hear
I know.
Phoenix's thoughts
You
on
need to go
the game.
first.
You need
Because
me to go first?
I've beaten it. My opinion is shifted a bunch of places. So I want to hear kind of where you're at, how you're feeling about the game.
I have heard something about the ending having some interesting aspect of it, which I'm not quite. I read somebody said that on Twitter. That was like the ending had something, some ramifications or
Hmm.
for on something. So I don't know. But I mean, as far as like where I'm at with the game so far, I'd say my Pokemon are probably like upper 30s, lower 40s in terms of level. And I'll just say, for me, I'm very like I'm lukewarm on it. Like I'm not loving it, not hating it. It just feels like a kind of unpolished Pokemon game. I don't know. I don't know how more to explain it. Like graphically, it's not super appealing. The gameplay isn't a huge step up from something like Arceus. I don't even know if you could call it a step up. I think Arceus probably had some more interesting aspects in terms of the free roaming and the free catching of Pokemon. Like
Hmm.
that was more interesting. Um, I don't really appreciate how the game has handled like gyms. I feel like it's kind of neutered
Yeah.
some of the gem aspects. Like some of these, I'll be honest. Like I don't have a problem. I know Pokemon is tailored towards children or younger people,
I
but
don't think
man,
that's not a good excuse. Like people who
some of these. Sorry, go ahead.
I would say people who that their go-to excuse is, oh, that's a kid's game. Most video games are geared towards kids. When you think about like it's a kids medium in many ways. Not saying that adults don't have fun with it, but you think about okay, Breath of the Wild. Kids play Breath of the Wild. I'm sure that was the number
Mm-hmm.
one demographic they were selling to. There is far more depth and attention to detail in a game like Breath of the Wild than there is in Scarlet and Violet. So just because it's a kids game doesn't mean it can't be good and well thought out and
Oh,
polished. So
that's a good point. I just mean like some of the like they've changed it to where you don't just walk into the gym, defeat everyone until you get to the boss. Like it kind of works now that you like for some reason you get to the gym and there's some sort of weird request that the gym person at the desk asks you to do. And man, these like little side quests
the olive rolling
to olive rolling and trying to
stuff
figure
that
out how
has
to cook
nothing to
them.
do with like Pokemon battles.
It
Like
has nothing to do with Pokemon.
so, Metal,
Yeah.
you go to get ready to fight this gym leader. I think it's like the bug gym leader or something like that. And then before you do, you have to take this qualification test. And what the test is some weird activity. You go into this maze, and there's this giant oblong egg that you have to bump into and push into a soccer goal.
Are you
That's
serious?
your goal. Nothing to do with Pokemon. I guess you can technically stop and like fight a
And
trainer to get like
you can avoid the
shortcuts.
trainers in there,
I
right?
didn't
Usually
even know
you're
you could
forced to
fight
fight
them.
trainers.
Yeah, I didn't know that was even an option. I just pushed the ball to the end. Took about 10 seconds and it was done. It was the stupidest thing. I'll come back on that.
That sounds disappointing.
Yeah, and most of
Well, that's
the
why I
tests are
was
like that.
that's why I was saying like to me like
Hmm.
and I guess I wouldn't have a problem with some of those changes if they were done interestingly or if they were just more adult approach. Like those some of those like requirements are like so childish in terms of like how easy they are. It's like I
They're
don't
just
know.
not
Like I
thought
didn't.
out very well. They are
No, they're
overly
not.
simplistic. Like I don't want to say childish as in okay, there's like a adult can't have fun with this concept, but there's no meat on the bone. Like one of the
There's
ones you do
another
later
one.
on is just like QTE. You just press button combos.
Yeah. There's another one where you get to the gym and the gym leader is in another town and he forgets his wallet. And all you have to do is walk to the other town and give him his wallet and then he goes back to the gym.
Well, no, that's
And then
not
you
fair.
have to
You have
walk
to
back
win
to
an
the
auction at the same time, which I'm just kidding. That
Oh,
was
I forgot. That's
no, it
so
was pointless.
stupid.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
and all yeah, the auction all you have to do is choose the highest number. You just because it's not your money, what does it matter? You just give
I don't think you can
I
lose. Yeah, the
yeah.
gyms are handled poorly. Uh,
I don't know.
Hmm.
I just feel like the extracurricular stuff is just for me is just not super entertaining. Like
mhm.
I'm not feeling super crazy about just ran. I actually feel like I'm starting to get bored of walking around and just catching Pokemon. Like I'm not super entertained by the gym stuff. The Mega Titan battles with the Pokemon are like super simplistic as well, man. Each of them are the same. It's like, oh, find this big giant Pokemon, you battle it. This guy gives his stupid dog Pokemon a sandwich. And it's
Oh,
like,
you're gonna have dog lovers yelling at you, Chaz. Be nice to Mabostif.
well, that's another problem. Is like again, like we've you touched on it, but it's like I understand this is made for children, but I feel like I'm starting to get to the point with the dialogue and some of the story here where I'm like, is Pokemon ever gonna like go anywhere? Like some of the dialogue is just so
And
corny. Like
to be fair, the ending does get a little dark.
okay,
And I'm not disagreeing with you. Like there are some very corny dialogue moments. You could say that in a lot of games, though. To be fair, I'm not sure if I would say it's necessarily just childish or if it's just simple or poorly written. I don't know. But to your point, like there's not enough there at the very least.
I feel like this is the first time I've played a Pokemon game, and I know I've complained about other Pokemon games, but this is probably the first time where I've played one where I'm like, okay, where are we going from here? Like, I get it. You're probably going to keep getting the same thing, but I don't know. This is the first time I've bought one day one where I'm like, I don't know. I'm worried about where this is going. Like, to me, there's not much advancement. There's not much interesting new things, and I felt like that's what Arceus brought. Was at least, Arceus was kind of an ugly game, and it had it was kind of clunky in terms of how the graphics and all that looked. But like at least Arceus was bringing something new to the table, and I don't feel like this game brings anything new to the table. The seamless transition between free roaming and battling is gone. Like I don't know.
I want to speak to that point very quickly because I want to. One thing I feel like I want to make sure I express going into this. I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but at the same time, this doesn't really make me worried about the future of Pokemon. I think a lot of people, if you enjoyed Arceus, you look at Scarlet and Violet, and it's a step down. That's my big take on this, just from my experience. I ended up loving Arceus. Not everybody did, and that's fair, but I really like the changes it made. And I think that
we both played it together, and I loved Arceus.
But I think here's my point. A lot of people, I think, assume that, okay, because Arceus came out and they liked all these changes, that this game was going to incorporate all those new best features of Arceus. That could have never happened. Because you got to think, Arceus came out January. This game releases less than 10 months after. This game was probably done, baked in the oven as far as a production standpoint a year ago, before Arceus even came out. Like, game development doesn't just, turn on a dime. Oh, Arceus just came out? Let's now revamp all of Scarlet and Violet to take this feedback in. I'm sure they took some, but a lot of the core elements that make Scarlet and Violet what it is were probably already somewhat set in stone before Arceus ever released. And there's not development time in there to go and change a bunch of stuff. The past 10 months has been polish to a certain extent. The game's not super polished, but they've been working on systems and coding and final elements of it. So I think people expected this to be an advancement of Arceus. I don't think that's ever what this game was supposed to be. Arceus, I think, was the kind of palate cleanser, so you could get used to a big shift in change to kind of test the waters. And this was their safe bet, right? This was introducing a few of those Arceus elements that they felt like people are going to be happy with, while still keeping as much of the tried and true Pokemon form as they could in there, so they didn't lose or alienate those who didn't like Arceus. I think the game that follows both of these in 2 or 3 years is going to be the one that people are really wanting. That's going to be where we see. You give me that face, but that's how development's going to work on this. Hopefully, they take the feedback from Arceus, the stuff they're learning from Scarlet and Violet, and you see that change in that future game. I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen, but that's your best shot at it happening. So, if anything, I'm more hopeful for that future game. Man, okay, let your face speak, Chaz, because it's saying things.
You sound. I don't know, man. I think you're giving GameFreak too much credit. I wonder, again, we had this talk back when Arceus came out about like where the idea came from. Okay. And I remember we were like, one random person within GameFreak, somebody was just like, "Yo, let's listen to Brandon on this one," and Brandon had this like crazy idea, and then Brandon got let go and went to work for some other company. It's like, I don't know, like,
Ended up playing for Digimon, working for
yeah,
I
Digimon
get what you're
instead.
saying. I don't, but you honestly, you know that's not how this played out, right? Arceus was
no, I
clearly
know.
a shift, and they clearly showed by releasing Arceus they were willing to make a major change, but they
There's no
had
way
to
they
have a
could have
safe
known
bet.
that the there's no way they could have known so quickly with the production cycle of this one
Right.
versus Arceus. They could have known Arceus was that well
Yeah, they
received.
could have known how well Arceus was going to play out, what from Arceus was going to work and not work, to see that implement here. This
It takes
was
2 to 3 years of production for a game. I
exactly.
get it. Yeah.
Scarlet and Violet was the safe bet. Now, I'm not saying it's the better game. I think Scarlet and Violet is in many ways, to me, some people say subjectively. I think it's objectively worse than Arceus in a lot of ways, and I'll get to my rationale for that in a minute. But I don't think that worries me necessarily about the next game, because now they're going to start their 3-year cycle here pretty soon to plan for whatever the next Pokemon game is after this, right? And now they can actually hopefully take feedback from Arceus, Scarlet and Violet, and make hopefully the right blend of the two. Will they do that? I don't know, but I think there is some optimism there. Could they botch it? Of course they could, but as I said, I'm at least hopeful for it. But I don't think
Yeah.
Scarlet and Violet is the where the game should go. It should not continue this direction explicitly. I went back and I played some Arceus a couple of days ago just to kind of see the feel of it, and
Is it better?
it immediately felt better to me. Maybe it's just because I clicked with Arceus better. I'll tell you what. I mean, I don't know what else you kind of want to get into. I tried to make this a real quick pros and cons for Scarlet and Violet because that was the only
You
way I
can
could kind
take
of
it
wrap my
away.
head
That's
around.
that's all I really had was just to me. That's the only new stuff was like some of the Titan battles, some of the gyms, which I already mentioned. The open world to me feels like a bit dumbed down versus Arceus. So you take it away. What do you got?
So this is kind of how I started. I did a pros con list, and then I also listed out things that Arceus did that this game didn't, and we can decide if that was a good or a bad thing. So I'll list the pros. I liked that you could skip trainers. You didn't have to interact with any trainers. You could see them, wave at them, keep on going, or you could stop and fight them, which I think was kind of nice. Because there were
Pretty
times.
indifferent.
Well, I didn't really. At least in older school games, like it did get annoying sometimes when a trainer saw you from halfway across the screen and you were forced to battle and there was no way around them. So I liked the
I
option.
agree with that.
The 3 different tracks were nice. Like you haven't probably played it yet, Metal, but you basically after the beginning of the game, you can go pursue 3 different main quest lines. You got the standard gym path, you've got this Titan path, which is kind of like the main narrative, if you will, of kind of, you know, the legendary quests and stuff like that. And then you've got what's kind of like the new Team Rocket quest. So you have 3
And
different
the
things you can
areas
pursue.
the areas are kind of level gated too. Like not level gate. There's no gate, but when you travel around, you're like, oh, I'm approaching level 20s and I'm only in the 10s. Or if I go
Yeah, and
this
then
way,
you
I'm
get
in
like
the
nerfed the minute you walk in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and you can still push on, but it can
Yeah,
be a
but it's gonna
grind.
be
While we're
extra hard.
talking about that, this isn't necessarily my pro cons thing, but the way they handled level progression was weird because technically you can go any direction in the game. Like you can walk out of the school and go straight up north to the highest level trainers and start fighting. So the game doesn't like level scale with you. Things are just gated, right? And that's good and bad in some ways. Like technically you could go and just beat your head against a wall for 3 hours and capture a level 50 Pokemon at level 10 if you had the, you know, facilities to do that. But the game doesn't really technically still make that feasible because if you don't go through the gym battles that lead up to it, you don't earn the badges to control the high level Pokemon. So it almost is pointless to even do that. So it's kind of a false sense of open narrate or exploration, right? You can technically, but the game's gonna fight you the entire way. It's kind of its way of forcing you to progress still down. You need to go counterclockwise around the map or something like that.
And can I throw something else out? Is I just thought about it, but like a big problem I have with this game is I don't want to say it's ridiculously easy. It is easy, but it can be made harder if you go in a specific direction, obviously. But I feel like a big downfall with modern Pokemon games is the idea of the XP share. Like, I get it, they would be much slower without it, but I don't know, like it gives you a purpose to use other Pokemon and I don't know. Like I feel
I
like
agree with that as far as using the other Pokemon. I like the convenience of using it to easily level up Pokemon because I'll tell you, there's so many Pokemon now. If I had to sit and manually use all 400 Pokemon to level them up, there's no way I would ever get
but
through
you
this
can
game.
capture their leveled up forms. Like their
Sometimes,
leveled up forms are walking around too.
yeah, but
Like
not always. I mean, so I'm
yeah,
yes, it wouldn't be exactly 400, but you see what I'm saying, right? You'd have to spend a
yeah.
lot more time leveling up individual Pokemon to get the most out of them. So
I just feel like they're sorry, good.
no, go. So we just say your point.
I was just gonna say in the older games, the XP share wasn't something you ever started out with. That
Right.
was something you had to earn.
Hmm.
And I feel like that should be the case here, where like you reach a point, you get the XP share, and then it feels like oh yeah, now I don't have to. I can play the way I want. You know, I mean, I'm not
That's
saying you
fair.
should
I don't
be.
inherently disagree with that. I can definitely see the pros to that. I think the main reason I would maybe lean in that camp is if you didn't have it, it would encourage you to spend more time using each Pokemon. But honestly, I think Arceus had a better solution to it with those research challenges. Like,
Mm,
so yeah, the experience is still being shared, but you are encouraged to use every Pokemon to complete these other challenges per each Pokemon. So that's my thing. You get more use out of each Pokemon. The experience really is just kind of a way of gating off how much power he has at various points. But that's not a bad point. I can definitely see the argument either way.
mm.
Anyway, okay, so
I'm
back to my
sorry. Go ahead with
pros.
your list. Yeah.
So 3 tracks. Compared to Arceus, there is deeper combat here. Like Arceus had a pretty streamlined fighting system, for better or for worse, which worked for that game. This game's more competitive. They bring back a lot of the tried and true like abilities that Pokemon can have that Arceus didn't have. So combat is more in depth. What else? My pro list is pretty short, to be honest. I started reaching here towards the end. Mystery trades are back. If you remember those, you could just go into the online system and just surprise trade. Not that that's really a core gameplay mechanic, but it's a nice feature to the game. Now these you could tell me, Chaz, if you think they're pros or not. So this game has co-op. Is that a pro or a con?
No, it's a con. I didn't. We played co-op and
It's neither right now. It's literally superfluous. Like, so technically, the way it works, Metal, is me and Chaz could jump into the same game, and I could see his trainer walking around fighting battles. It doesn't do anything to interact with me, though. I literally just see him. I can't battle him.
Huh.
We don't like go into gyms together or anything. Like if we go into like a gym or a city, he goes into his own instance to fight the gym leader, and I would go into mine because the gyms are made for single battles. It's not like we can go do double battles together unless I'm really missing something. And if I am, please someone tell me because that would give so much more depth to it. It literally is just we can then go into the world. We actually went completely separate directions. I just did my own thing. He did his. We were in the same game and we forgot about it halfway through. Like there's almost
Huh.
no interaction from a co-op level. So I
That
think
sounds
Hmm?
that sounds like a way of a good opportunity wasted.
Yes.
oh yeah,
Like there
it felt
is
pointless when we
stuff
did it.
they could do
Yeah.
there. It was cool to see him running around for a minute, but if we could have like got together and had like quests we could do. There's no side questing
Yeah.
in this game really, by the way, which Arceus had, which I think in an open world game you really needed something like that to flesh things out. Not just co-op related, just side quests in general. But anyway, co-op to me was a bit of a bust. You've got co-op raids. I'm not a big fan of the raids. I find them pretty one note, but some people like them. And you can make your Pokemon auto battle. If you want them to just level up, you can send them out, he'll run around in front of you and just fight Pokemon, which is kind of a neat feature. I'm not sure if it's a pro. It's a feature, but it's kind of neat. That's my pro list, honestly. There's not a whole lot else that I'll explicitly say good. My con list is at least double that size.
Oh boy.
So there's no character customization. Like coming from Arceus, you could change your outfit, change your look, everything. Okay, let me take it back. There is some character customization, but it
Just a
is
little bit.
the lightest. Like you have a selection of hairstyles, less than Arceus had. You have to wear school uniforms because you're a school student. You can choose between 4 uniforms. That's it. You have the winter version, the summer version, the spring version, whatever. And they're all variations of the same color and whatnot because they have to be purple for violet or orange for the other one. I think the only customization you really have is like your shoes and your backpack. So not everybody cares about that, but Arceus let you wear a freaking ninja outfit. Like I don't know, it was a pretty big departure.
And let Brandon go, man.
I know, poor Brandon. He's doing better things. Maybe he's working with Yuji Naka on the next Sonic. No, wait,
Oh yeah.
Working with Capcom? What?
What
Yeah,
else?
Capcom. Yeah.
Some of these are things that came from Arceus, so I'm trying to skip those right now. The world is really bland. Like, it is an open world with no real distinguishing features to it. Like, some people are going to argue, oh, yeah, well, there's this one mountain over here. It is the most generic mountain that you could have. There's, like, a lake with no distinguishing features. Like, you think, when I think about Pokemon open world, I picture, like, Pokemon Snap open world. Like, the
Hmm.
detail of those worlds. And I know that's not feasible necessarily on the Switch hardware and et cetera, but when I think about walking through an environment with Pokemon in it, I picture Pokemon Snap, like especially the new one, like the way the Pokemon interact with stuff. They're jumping through waterfalls, they're playing with each other, different species out and whatever. Like they're living in this world that is lush and has landmarks and looks interesting. Some of that is art style. That isn't just limitations of hardware. That is lack of artistic direction with how they design this world. This world is just flat, boring textures. You have the lake
Hmm.
area, you have the swamp area. There's nothing definitive about any of it. So the world's boring, is what I'm getting at. There are Pokemon running around in it, but not interacting with it, if that makes sense. So that's disappointing. As I said, no side quests, which once again, Arceus had side quests. I'm not saying I need like even a great side quest. I would have been fine with some collection stuff. Go capture 10 normal type Pokemon. Go fight X amount of whatever. I don't know, something. But beyond the aspect of capturing a Pokemon in the wild, there's nothing encouraging you to go and explore the world. Give me something to do. We already mentioned the gym stuff, the olive rolling and the gym test. Most of them are terrible.
Yeah.
I'm trying to recall if there was any of them that was worth doing, but not really. Um, None of the
Those are
gym tests were
boring.
interesting. They were all pretty boring. The gym
The
battles, you only fight the gym leader themselves.
leader, pretty
Every
much.
once in a while, they'll give you like one little battle in front of it with like a gym minion or something, but it's not like the old school gyms where you'd have to work your way through a gauntlet of like 8 different pre-trainers before you got to them. So gyms are a
And
step down.
also the like I forgot the what are they, the fortresses that you take on, like those are really boring too.
Yeah,
Like that, the whole automatic battling in this game is super simplistic. You just mash the right button and your Pokemon go out and fight, and it's just like
which I'll
you
tell
do
you
that.
is fine. I think for while you're walking around the open world, if you're just trying to like gather some resources or whatnot, it's a nice I think quality of life thing to let the Pokemon just kill and gather some resources. I didn't like it for those star battle things though, as an actual like mechanic you have to interact with. Because you're right, they're boring. Like there are these sections where you basically have to run in and have your Pokemon automatically beat X amount of other Pokemon, and then you fight basically the Team Rocket leader, and it's just boring. You literally
It's
walk
always is
in,
a car.
yeah,
Like the first couple I fought are just car Pokemon or something.
yeah, they are all identical. Besides one or two extra Pokemon they use, like those were lackluster. Spoilers, by the time you get there, the Elite Four is pretty terrible. Like you know how in the old school Elite Four, how you would go through like you go into the first room, it would be themed like the Pokemon type that you leader uses. You'd fight them in that room, it'd be kind of dramatic, and then you move on to the next one. So spoilers, you go into this Pokemon League, you go into this really bland white room, looks like an insane asylum kind of thing. It's just an empty black room or white room. And then the first Elite Four member comes out, you fight him in this big boring white room. Then he's like, okay, calling in the next guy. And the next guy walks into the same white room and you fight him. Then the third
That's
one.
lame.
Then the fourth one. And it is literally just you stay in this one super sterile, boring room and just fight trainer, 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 trainer. Yeah, that was pretty boring. um, so most of the paths you go down all end up being pretty lackluster. The the gym one is probably the worst one with the Elite Four. The Titan one ends up being
The Titan was
better
probably the most entertaining one.
because it actually leads into what is arguably, I guess, the core narrative of it with the professor and stuff. And I won't get into that too much right now. I'll let you.
Because I'm not in that
Yeah, and
section yet.
I don't want to spoil that for you. Not that there's a lot to spoil, but you go into a new section of the map at the very end, and there is some interesting narrative stuff about how you get this legendary Pokemon, where they come from, what's happened to the professor. Like there's some intrigue there from the narrative. There's almost none of that throughout the rest of the game, so they kind of just all drop it at the end. I honestly think the last section gets a little tedious, so you can tell me how you feel
Mm.
about it when you get there. But the narrative is at least interesting. And then what's the other track? The Team Rocket Star Team battle track. The ending narrative is okay-ish to kind of wrap it up, but you see it coming, so it's, not really overly interesting. All the tracks are bland. That's what I'll get at. So your main reason to go out and explore this world, to go on these tracks, most of them are pretty lackluster. So your only real reason to go around the world is to capture all the Pokemon, and I don't even think that's overly engaging. I don't know. I know I'm coming across real negative, but most of it was done better in Arceus. So I'm going to go to my list of things that Arceus did better, in my opinion. You could throw and aim your Pokeballs. Like in this, you have to lock on, you throw the Pokeball, you can't miss, you just throw the Pokeball and it always hits the Pokemon, and then
Gamer,
you fight
did
them.
you play Arceus? You didn't play Arceus?
I haven't, but now I want to.
If you're going to play one, play Arceus.
Because it sounds like it. Because I haven't touched a Pokemon game since X and Y.
Yeah, I think you would like Arceus a lot. I'll tell.
I really enjoyed them.
Yeah, Arceus is a whole refresh of the Pokemon formula. Like the stuff that is working kind of in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Arceus introduced the pseudo open world, free reign, collecting Pokemon thing. Arceus is what started that. But the cool thing about it is like Arceus kind of merged together the traditional way of catching Pokemon with kind of the Let's Go version, where you could sneak up to a Pokemon, chuck a ball at it, and if you just chuck a ball, you could actually try to capture it. Like you didn't have to fight it. You could just chuck a ball, just like in what the original first episode of Pokemon where he captures a Caterpie. No fight. You just chuck the Pokeball at him, and if you're successful, you capture him. If not, you're not.
Gamer, if you play Arceus again,
actually,
I'll play. If you play again, I'll play again because I would love to talk about it again.
Yeah, I completely forgot I played Let's Go. Never mind, I played Let's Go, and those are fun. Like Eevee and Pikachu, I played them both. They were fantastic.
Yeah, and they were
in
fun.
their own way.
And part of those mechanics are in Arceus, as far as like, okay, I can chuck the ball and I can just capture him. But you had the option. If you wanted, you could fight the Pokemon and weaken it. So you could actually choose your Pokemon. Like you literally chose your Pokemon on the list, grabbed its ball, and then chucked that ball at the other one. It felt like you were the actual trainer. Like you were actually choosing your Pokemon and manually selecting it and chucking it. Some people might have thought it was tedious. I liked that level of tedium, I guess, to interact with it. So you had more option with how you collected or fought your Pokemon.
And the side quests were more interesting. Like
it actually had side quests.
You actually talked to people, and people would be like, "Hey, I lost my thing. Can you go find it for me?" Or, "Hey, I would really love a picture of this Pokemon. Can you go take a picture of it for me?"
It's not that they were overly involved, but they were just quick, short little things that you could do while you were out there that fleshed out the people in the world. They had the one side quest I really liked from Arceus where, remember the kid who got lost?
The
Drift Bloom? And I thought that one was really interesting because, like, that was one of the few, like, Pokedex entries I know. Like, the Drift Bloom Pokemon used to, like, steal kids and float them off.
Yeah.
And they literally referenced that in Arceus. Like, this was the origin of kind of where that Pokedex entry came from, was these kids on the beach and the Drift Bloom were luring them out there. So it's kind of this really horrifying, dark thing. But it was just in a side quest, which was kind of neat. Where am I at? You could what else? Oh, do you remember the what do they call them? The weird dome zones, like the rifts or tears.
Oh, I remember those.
You basically had these weird dimensional rift zones that just popped up randomly in the map, and Pokemon from like the future and all these different areas would just pop up in these areas, and there were these really just different zones that were randomly, or they were on a timer. They were like high-level Pokemon, like super evolved Pokemon that would come in. And it just made those really like exciting moments. You just going around the map, and all of a sudden, bam, this rift thing would pop up. This big hurricane would shoot from the sky, and it was just this really cool moment. None of that is in Scarlet and Violet. It is just bland the entire time. What else? Oh, this was a small thing. In Arceus, I forgot you could do this. When you battle Pokemon, you still have control of your trainer, and you can walk them around the battle and actually watch the Pokemon as they're fighting from different perspectives.
Oh, that's always fun.
Yeah, in Scarlet and Violet, you can control the camera, but you're not controlling the trainer. Like, I guess it's one of the things like I really liked about Arceus. You felt like you were the trainer. In this game, you just feel like you're watching everything, if that makes sense. You're kind of third person instead of actually in the shoes of the trainer. What else? The navigation with the Pokemon was a lot better. Like, in this game, you can hop on your legendary Miraidon or Koraidon, whatever, and like he can end up flying and climbing stuff and whatnot. Compared to the way you can fly and move around in Arceus, it's so much worse. Like Arceus, you could jump, like fly up on your one Pokemon, like literally soar across the entire map. You do it in this game, your Pokemon like flies for like 10 seconds and then just like tanks. So you can't even get like across the map with it. Like it's neutered quite a bit. You had the boss battles inside of Arceus, which I know I wasn't a huge fan of, but I remember Chaz, you liked them a lot.
I really like those sections.
Compared to what we have now, I miss them a lot.
Way better.
Yeah, because even though I didn't love them, I liked them well enough, and they were interesting at least. There's nothing like that here. Like you had like literal boss battles.
You almost could battle Pokemon without battling them because you were like whittle them down with the bag of.
Yeah, you had to like throw rocks at them or something like. I know you haven't played it, Metal, but you wouldn't use your Pokemon to fight these legendary Pokemon. You literally would like have a bag of rocks and you would just run after the Pokemon, chucking it out. And some of them had more to it than that, but like I don't know, the Pokemon felt threatening too. Like they could actually attack the trainer. Like your trainer had a health bar, and you could get knocked out like without even
you fight this giant Arcanine. And like the volcano and stuff, it's like really cool.
And he could straight up murder you, like not murder your Pokemon, murder you, the trainer.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I don't know. That's why I said like you felt like the trainer in this game. Like everything is felt like something you were doing or interacting with instead of just the Pokemon doing it for you. I thought the art animations were better in Arceus. Not that they were great, but they were better than what we have in Scarlet and Violet. Neither game looks good, but I feel like Scarlet and Violet looks worse because it doesn't have the cell shading to it. So it just like nothing's hidden, if that makes sense. Inside of Arceus, the cell shading kind of masks some of the grossness and muddiness of some of the textures. But in Scarlet and Violet, they're kind of just on full display and they don't look good. There's probably more things. I know we're running long, so I won't keep going through it.
No, it's fine.
In general, I feel like Scarlet and Violet is one step forward, but two steps back from what Arceus was doing. Like, Arceus is the better template to build off of, in my opinion. Some people are going to disagree because Arceus was not good if you like Pokemon for like competitive.
I don't see how it's a step forward.
Here's where it's better. For people who play Pokemon for competition, this is the better game. Like, you have far more you can do as far as raising your Pokemon, curating their abilities, raising them for certain, like, types of competitive application. Like, this is the more tried and true, like, core competitive Pokemon formula. But if you don't care about competing... what?
No, I was wanting to wrap it up, but I just thought about a major aspect of this game. Oh, sorry, finish your thought.
I was just saying, like, if you like competing, this is the better game. The co-op kind of side of things where we fight with other trainers, this is better. But you could add that element to Arceus, and I think have the better game, the best of both worlds. So
I just thought about the one other aspect is that I didn't care for was the terrestrialization. I didn't really feel like it added anything, and each Pokemon doesn't have its own unique terrestrialization look. It's like they have like
the looks are disappointing.
They're like 3 to 5 different sets, and
no, there's 18.
They just choose. Oh, is there? Oh,
there is a look for every type. You just probably saw the most common. So here's the thing. Technically, I think the terrestrializing or whatever it's called is a pretty interesting mechanic because basically what it does, Serrano, like say you have a fire type Pokemon, you could find a fire type Pokemon that has a water type terrestrialize. So you could be fighting normally, and then if you come up against a Pokemon who you're weak against, but that's weak against water, you literally can change your Pokemon type, which opens up a whole level of competitive play there because now you can have a separate typing that can protect your weakness. So from a competitive side, that's pretty cool. And if you can go out, and that makes looking for Pokemon interesting because you can find Pokemon that have random terrestrialized types and have really cool kind of combinations. So I think it's a good mechanic. I think the look of it is kind of crap. I don't like the crystallization and the weird hats they put on it. That makes it seem kind of cheesy. But the idea of what's happening there is neat. If they could have found a better way to do it, like you didn't crystallize, but like your Pokemon, like if you turn to a water type, literally change the look, or like, I don't know if a good way to do it, like without really making a lot of work for the developers. But imagine if your Charmander, instead of having a flame on his tail, it turned to like an icicle or something to show he changed type. That would be really cool. And I know that's a huge amount of extra effort for the developers, but that would be a better aesthetic change. But the concept of terrestrializing, I think, is good, and I think it will add a lot of competitive play to the game. But I don't know. It's a step somewhere. I'm not going to say it's the right direction. There are some things this game does like okay, like the terastallizing, but I think Arceus is the better foundation to build off of. Take the competitive stuff that worked here, some of the modern flair, whatever you want to call it, and shove that into Arceus. Do you feel like they should stick with the open world, or should they go to what Arceus did as far as having like the mini open hubs? Because I felt like those ended up playing a little bit better.
I agree with you. I just feel like if it worked better in Arceus, that's probably where they should go. I don't feel like this world that they've developed with this title is just not that interesting.
It's not.
It's not that interesting. I'm not blaming the Switch, but either the power of the Switch or GameFreak's.
I don't think it's the Switch. I mean, I'm not saying that there isn't any issue with the Switch being overpowered. Go ahead.
The world is just bland. The world is bland. The Pokemon don't interact with it. It doesn't feel like
lacking design is what it is. Like, I'm not saying that they aren't held back by hardware limitations. I'm sure that is part of it. In the performance issues, that's a whole other issue. I'm talking about, and I think what you're talking about is literally the design of the world. Like, there's not.
Oh yeah.
You could make interesting architecture. Here's the thing: this world is not like randomly generated or procedurally generated. So they can't use that excuse of, oh, it's a little bland because it's just procedural generated landscaping. They made this landscape. They made this map in an editor. You're telling me they couldn't have made it a little more interesting? Have interesting looking valleys that lead to a certain place. Like, they have valleys, but they're literally just valleys with no rhyme or reason. Or there's a mountain, and it's just a mountain. It's not a mountain that leads to something interesting or looks a certain way or does something interesting that some art direction or that some level design could have actually taken into account. I don't feel like there's level design here, if that makes sense. And that's probably not being fair. There probably are some parts in there that are a little more curated. Like you're showing, like I'm looking at one area in your screen now. Oh, well, it's gone now. Crap.
Well, that's interesting. You just said there is no the level design. I agree with you. It doesn't feel like there's much level design.
But like this spot you're going into, so there is this little mining area that's used for a battle. So and clearly that was curated. It's not super interesting, but they did something there. But there's very few instances of stuff like that. Like for the most part, it is just bland landscape, grassy area, bland with it, whatever this is. So I think an open world could still work. Is I think what I'm getting at here with time in the design oven, if you want to look at it that way. If they could curate it a little better, open world could be great. And there are open world games that have done a better job at it. Like, I know some people act like Breath of the Wild is a little bland because it's so open and a little barren, but there are memorable pieces of architecture and landscape in Breath of the Wild that I can still think back and be like, oh, I remember those Twin Peaks. Remember the ones that had the big split down the middle? Or I remember the big labyrinth zone in the back corner, or like the forest area. Like, there's spots that stand out that the Switch can obviously handle. That was a big world, bigger than this game. Like, that map was bigger than this game. I'm almost certain of it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I didn't feel like it. You could argue that maybe it isn't as populated, but I'm not even so sure if that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, so. but making that stuff requires a very rich and valuable company behind it to make. I don't know if GameFreak can afford that type of game design. And
I know.
I don't know. They've been around for a long time. I'm sure they can do what they want.
I don't know. They've only sold 10 million.
It's only the largest entertainment IP in the world. I don't know. I'm never one to come down hard on developers act like they're being lazy, because I don't think that's the case. Like, I think the team at Game Freak is working their butts off. In 3 years, they've made 3 Pokemon games. More than that, I think.
I think the problem is that they pop out too many Pokemon games too quickly. I think it's the Madden effect, where there's not much development time to really do a heck of a whole lot. And
they probably don't have enough teams in.
They don't have enough people. That's what this is. And that's where the argument that you're saying that, oh, all these money bags should be coming into play. Like, I think their team, and somebody can correct me if they know for sure, I think it's like 200 people, which sounds like a lot. But when you think about some of the big AAA studios out there, there are thousands of people.
Thousands, yeah.
And that's where they should be at. Game Freak, if what I heard is true and it's really only 200 people, they need to scale up, like, immensely. They have the resources to do so. I'm not sure what the rationale...
They make the money to do so too. That's impossible. That they can't hire.
I'm not sure what the rationale is that they don't have 3 separate teams of 200 people working on games.
The rationale is that they can afford to not spend that money and still sell 10 million copies.
Yeah, I guess that probably is the rationale, but
that is the rationale.
I'll tell you though, I think that's gonna start changing. Like, I'm not saying that this game hasn't sold a buttload and isn't still gonna make them, buku bucks even with all the issues it's had. This game, I think, more than any other, has been the most vocal and biggest. I think what's a good way to say is tarnish on Nintendo's.
IGN gave it like a 6 out of, or I guess they'll say it right here.
I think it was like 7. I think it was 6 or 7.
Which is really rare for freaking. It's really rare
the
for a
lowest
Pokemon game to be that low.
It's the lowest mainline Pokemon game. And you have situations where Nintendo were forced to give refunds on the game and all this other stuff. So I think there's been a big enough tarnish on this game that's going to make GameFreak or Nintendo, one or the other, do something differently. I really, really hope so. If they really just kind of brush this under the rug and just push forward, I'm hesitant that I want to continue supporting that. I don't know.
Well, like you said, the development cycle should mean that the good aspects of Arceus should start showing up in the next game or two. So
I would be hopeful. See, I'm hoping that they don't have another spin-off like Arceus. I know some people are thinking they're going to have another Legends-like game. I don't think that should be the case. I think Legends was a chance for them to experiment that they hopefully learned a lot from. I also don't really want to see them do a remake. I know a lot of people are thinking, they're going to remake, Black and White next or something like that. I'm hoping they skip that generation and they just work on the mainline game. Wait 2 or 3 years. I'm fine waiting no Pokemon games for 3 years. I'm not saying that they're going to want to do this, but take their time.
Madden people have been saying that for years, that they want EA to take a few years to work on development. And
to be fair though, I mean, well, not to be fair. I agree with that point.
Look how much better this looks.
Oh, you're showing Arceus?
Yeah, this looks.
It's the cell shading. It makes it look stylized, even though it still technically looks like crap in a lot of areas. Like the textures are still crappy. Like in the environment, honestly, looks about.
This looks tons better
because of the shading and the cell shading. Like that's what makes it look nicer. Because technically, the geometry and the way the worlds are created still look kind of crappy. They look about like how it does in Violet and Scarlet, but the cell shading masks a lot of it.
I think gamer needs to play this game. I really.
You're convincing me to play it after all the.
I loved Arceus.
You're hyping
the
it
Mega
apart,
Pokemon were really good. Like, I like it more.
Watch our review. That was like the first episode we did, was talk about Arceus. Our very first podcast episode was a review on it, and we talked about it for like 40 minutes.
Yeah, like this, I like this far more after playing Scarlet and Violet.
7? Really?
Yeah, because it had performance issues. Like, it had issues, and it had some elements that weren't fleshed out either. But I think people were just assuming like, oh well, the next game is going to polish out all that stuff. But now looking back, this game should have been like an 8 or a 9. May not 9.
Yeah,
but this should have been at least an 8. Comparative to what we have right now in Scarlet and Violet.